Hey everyone, welcome back to the RetroBreak Podcast. This is episode 48, and in today's episode I wanted to talk about some of my favourite long-running game franchises and game series. I've picked out 7, I think, of my favourite long-running game franchises that I'm always excited when every single new game comes out, and I go and play them on day one, and there's a few reasons why I like them, and I think it can be boiled down to a few things. The gameplay, obviously, number one. All of these games that I'm going to be sharing in this week's podcast episode have incredible gameplay, but as well as that, they also have a really large and interesting cast of characters, and because they've been running for such a long time as well, you can actually see the progression from within those series, and you can see how the gameplay has changed over the years, and how, for some of them at least, new developers and different people on the staff have come and gone, and how they've all left their individual mark on these series too. Another thing that I really love about all of these games is the incredible soundtracks that accompany them, and because this is a podcast, it's primarily an audio experience, I'll actually share some of my favourite tracks from these games as we're going through them today. So the first game series that I absolutely love, and it's actually very difficult to actually think of any bad games from this series. I can only think of 2, really, which is pretty insane considering there's probably been like 30 plus entries at this point. I haven't done much research in advance, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the franchise in question is Kirby, and my personal favourite game in the Kirby series is Kirby's Fun Pack, also known in America as Kirby Superstar, but just the series overall has been such a joy to play since I discovered the series from way back then in like 1996, when I first played Kirby's Fun Pack, and I just fell in love with the concept of the game. I fell in love with the idea of, collecting all the different characters' abilities and using them in levels. The music was just outstanding, and in that game in particular, it actually has a few really interesting separate stories and things to unlock as you progress through the game. And since then, I've been back and I've played every other game in the series, right from the start all the way up to the most recent ones in the modern day, like Kirby and the Forgotten World, I think it's called, or Forgotten Land, Forbidden World, I can't remember. On the Switch, the new 3D game, which I have not played as much as I should have. But yeah, such an incredible series. I especially loved playing through all the Game Boy entries. Back in the day after school, I would go to my nan's house and I would play through Kirby's Dream Land, Kirby's Dream Land 2, Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland for the Game Boy Advance. And I really loved all the spin-off games in the series too, from things on the SNES like Dream Course, which was a really cool kind of isometric golf-style game, which is still really, really fun to play, and I go back and play it occasionally. And Kirby's Power Paintbrush for the DS and its sequel on the Wii U were both really, really fun, kind of unique games where you use the stylus to draw the level that Kirby rolls around on, but it still has that traditional Kirby gameplay layered on top of that as well, and it's just such a great franchise. And for the music for this franchise, and I'm going to be sharing 1 minute of a particular track for each of these series. So this one is actually the credits theme to my favourite game in the series, which is Kirby's Fun Pack. Enjoy. Series that I wanted to talk about is The Legend of Zelda, and I've done a full video about my journey through the Zelda series in the past, but as a kind of overview for this podcast, my first Zelda game was actually Zelda 2, Adventure of Link for the NES, and although at the time I was so young that I couldn't even read, so I didn't really know what I was meant to be doing, I still really enjoyed myself just wandering around Hyrule, not knowing what the hell was going on, but just enjoying the different battle screens and exploring the towns and following people into their houses for no apparent reason. I obviously didn't get very far in the game. I don't even think I managed to get to the first palace, but I played that a lot. And then a few years later, when I got the N64, I had Ocarina of Time. And because I remembered the game being so confusing and so, like, not knowing what to do in the game because I was just a kid at the time. When I got Ocarina of Time, I kind of felt the same way about that, and we actually sold it because I said that I probably wouldn't be able to enjoy the game very much. But obviously, very soon after that, I saw the error of my ways and picked up Ocarina of Time again and thoroughly enjoyed it. So my first proper Zelda experience, from the point of view of me being able to play all the way through the game to the end, was actually Ocarina of Time, and then I went back and played classics like Link's Awakening properly. I did already have Link's Awakening, but I'd never properly played it until after that, when I actually figured out what the Zelda series was all about. And then I went back and played Link to the Past and Majora's Mask and all the other ones. And then from the Wind Waker onwards, I picked up every single game on release day and thoroughly enjoyed each and every one of them. And I'm sure a lot of you listening really enjoy the series as well. So there's one track in particular that really sticks in my mind as a very important moment in my journey through the Zelda series. And the reason that this is so important is because up until that point, I'd been avoiding every single spoiler for Skyward Sword because I was so excited about the release of that game. And before Skyward Sword came out, we went to go and see the 25th anniversary symphony concert, or the 20th anniversary, I can't remember. It was one of those two. So we went to the symphony in London, and at the end of the symphony, they played a trailer for Skyward Sword, and that was the first time that I ever properly saw the game, because before then, like I said, I'd been avoiding everything. And to accompany that trailer, they had the orchestra there play this song right now. It's called Ballad of the Goddess, and I think it is quite possibly my favourite song in the entire series. So have a listen to this one. The next series that I wanted to bring up, and don't worry, they're not all going to be giant major franchises, but this next one is Sonic the Hedgehog. And of course, it's probably one of the most prolific game series of all time. The amount of games in the series is just staggering, and honestly, all of the mainline entries I've actually really enjoyed. Even the ones that people online say they're not that good. I really enjoy each and every game that comes out in the series, and I'm always looking forward to whatever the latest game is. And with Sonic Frontiers, it kind of took me a little bit of time to get into the game, but once I did, once it finally clicked, I really enjoyed my time with that as well. And again, the music was fantastic, and I loved in Frontiers as well how it tied in all of the stories and characters from all of the previous games. And again, I know it kind of gets a bad rep online that the story could have been better, and it's mostly told through flashbacks and, you know, maybe a bit of fan service and pandering with all the different references and things. But I thoroughly enjoyed all my time with that game and with the series in general. So it was difficult to come up with a specific song for the Sonic franchise, because I think it's pretty well known that Sonic in general has just an incredible soundtrack. No matter the quality of the game, you can guarantee that the music, at least, is going to be fantastic. But I went back to the Mega Drive for this one, and I decided to share one of my favourite tracks, probably my overall favourite track from the 16-bit era of the Sonic games, and it is a level from Sonic and Knuckles, which was the 4th game in the series, and that game was kind of an attachment for Sonic 3, and that's a whole nother story for another day. But the song in question and the level in question is Lava Reef Zone, so enjoy this one. And I was really happy to see this zone and this song get a remake in Sonic Mania. So take a quick listen to this Sonic Mania version of Lava Reef Zone, and you can compare the two and see what you think. Now for another Sega franchise, and I'm sure you saw this one coming. This is Super Monkey Ball, and the recent Super Monkey Ball game has been absolutely amazing, and I played it all the way through on stream the other day and absolutely enjoyed every single minute of that game. It's quite possibly my second favourite game in the series after the first one, and that is high praise indeed. So anyway, the Super Monkey Ball series. This was a series that I got into from the very first entry. Before it even came out on the GameCube, I had a VHS tape that was showing me the upcoming releases for the system, and I always thought from that tape that Super Monkey Ball just looked so unique and so different to anything else that I'd ever seen. So when I got it, at launch, basically, I fell in love with the game. I thought it was one of the best games that I'd ever played. And, you know, that game is extremely challenging as well, so it lasted me a long time. Even though it doesn't really have that many levels, but, you know, the skill you need to get through some of the master stages is just immense. So it kept me busy for a long time. And like I've said about all of these games as well, I loved the soundtrack. And I think it's because I've heard this soundtrack so many times, because of the amount of times that I've just fallen off the stage and had to restart, that all of this music from the Monkey Ball franchise has just burned into my brain. And I just love each and every one of the tracks from all of the games, actually. Every single game has a fantastic soundtrack. Even the most recent entry in the series, Banana Rumble, I was just constantly blown away by the quality of the OST in these games. So let's take a listen to a track from the very first game in the series, and it kind of has a different feel to some of the later ones. Techno kind of trancey style music. But anyway, there's one track in particular from the first game which really stands out to me as the best in the series, in my opinion, and that is for the underwater levels. So enjoy this piece of music here. So going from a franchise that's still getting some love, that just got a latest entry in the series, to a franchise that seems long dead and buried, unfortunately. It's a franchise by Capcom, and it is Mega Man. And I'm very, very sad with what has happened to the Mega Man series over the past few years. They keep trying to bring it back and also failing at bringing it back, and I think the problem was that the Mega Man series just veered off into so many wildly different directions that they just don't know what to do with it anymore. But as a massive fan of the series, in fact, Mega Man was one of the very first games that I ever played as a kid. Like, as far back as I can remember, I've been a fan of the Mega Man series. And I've actually been a fan of all of these other branching series that have spun off from the main Mega Man series, like Mega Man Battle Network. I absolutely loved that from the moment I first played it. The Mega Man Zero and ZX games are just incredible action platformers by Inti Creates, which are one of my favourite game developers of all time. The original Mega Man series, which currently has 11 games, they're some of my favourite games of all time. In fact, I'm thinking of doing a retrospective on the original Mega Man series, maybe just the original NES games, and there was still 6 on the original NES, which all played basically the same, which were all incredible games, and I can't wait to touch on all of them. And then, of course, there was the Mega Man X series, which began really, really well, and then kind of took a dive during the PS2 era and could never quite recover from that. And there was the Mega Man Star Force series, which was the sequel to the Battle Network series. And there's just so many more, and I want to dedicate a separate video to all of these different entries in the franchise. But I will end it there for now, so let's take a listen to a piece of music from the original Mega Man series, so that is Mega Man 1 through 11. And this particular track is quite possibly my favourite in the entire original Mega Man series. This is a track from Mega Man 10, and it is Solar Man's theme. Enjoy. And finally, the last franchise for this podcast is Touhou, which is a franchise that I've been getting back into in a big way since I released a podcast a few weeks ago where I talked about meeting a fellow fan of the series. And since then, I've been playing the games pretty much every single day after work, just for a little bit at least. And in that series, currently, there's 19 main games and there's a ton of spin-offs. And there's also a ton of, I want to say fan games, but they're also kind of legitimate games because of the way that Zune runs the Touhou series in general. And it's really interesting, and it's not something that I've seen done with any other game franchise. It is the fact that he actually allows fan projects and fan games to actually have full official releases, like even with publishers and stuff if they want to. And it just means that the Touhou franchise has just spanned off into this incredible mass of games, different kinds of media. There's several animes, there's manga, there's comics, there's basically everything you could think of to do with fandom. There is something that you can find related to Touhou. And it is a series that I want to do a video on in the future, but it is very, very overwhelming. Like, even if I just want to cover the main games in the series, that's 19 individual entries, and that's not counting the ones in between. Like, there's 14.5, there's like 10.5 and stuff, which are like offshoots, but still part of the main franchise. It is just a mammoth series, and it has so many fans all around the world, and I'm very glad to be counted among them. Anyway, as for the music in this game and this series is just so unique. It's mainly known for an instrument that Zune kind of popularized in all of his games, basically, from 6 onwards, and they're basically called Zunpits. They're like trumpets. It's kind of like trumpets mixed with really, really fast, intricate piano themes as well. So I actually want to share 2 tracks from this series just because the music is so unique and interesting. I don't think one could do it justice. So the first one that I want to share here is called Lunatic Princess from Touhou 8 Imperishable Night. And this is definitely one of the most iconic themes in the entire series. And I think once you hear this, you'll know why Zun and Touhou has so many fans. So I hope you enjoyed that very unique sound, and the next one is one that has been stuck in my head ever since I played this game recently, and this is Clown Piece's theme from Touhou 15, Legacy of Lunatic Kingdom, and the name of the song is Period of the Star-Spangled Banner. Enjoy. And something else that's so amazing, because these are all long-running franchises, and I love the OSTs so much, is the fact that fans of these games have actually made amazing remixes of most of the songs that I've shared in this podcast, and in fact most of the songs from most of the games, and it's just so much fun watching all of these remixes online, like people doing electric guitar covers or piano solo covers or just everything in between, even to like full-blown orchestrated versions of some of my favourite music. It's just a joy to see the fans gathered together to celebrate such a unique medium and such a unique sound as well with a lot of these games. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. It was actually just going to be me talking about the games in the series, but I figured throwing in the music would be fun for the podcast side of things. So really hope you enjoyed this episode. And let me know down in the comments on YouTube or on Spotify. I think there's a Q&A section on there. What are some of your favourite long-running game series, and what are some of your favourite songs to accompany them? Anyway, that's it for this episode. I won't bother going into my projects or favourite content this time, so join me again in 2 weeks' time, and I'll definitely have a lot to share then. But until then, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye.